coming up on More Than Before.
Never ever give up. You are worth it. You matter. You owe it to yourself to be the best person you can be. That happens one day at a time, intentionally, every single day.
This is More Than Before with Nathan Cook.
Welcome back, everyone. I am really excited today for my guest. He is an incredible speaker. He is a great trainer with passion for values-based leadership, feeding the world and also empowering our youth. He is the co-founder of Key Leadership Institute, and he's also the founder of Junior Speakers Club. He is an expert in specialized oil field inspection techniques. I met him back in 2013 when we were both helping to start a massive country transformation in the country of Guatemala, which since then has had some major transformations and will continue to have transformational change for generations to come. He's a father, he's a husband, and he is a very good friend of mine. Jan Robberts, welcome to the show, brother. How are you today?
Nathan Cook, it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you. I mean, as you said, to mention our friendship, and that's a long-standing friendship, and I really appreciate you as a friend, and that you even invite me on your show is a bonus. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because as I think about when we first met, we met back in Guatemala, and then I think we didn't really get to know each other until we were in Paraguay. And we were actually roommates in Paraguay at the same hotel. It had just been built not that long ago, and I think they were still trying to figure out what outlets could actually be powered or not. I think we were actually sharing outlets. We were switching our phones back and forth to make sure we could actually get to where we were going. And then we had the great fortune of being able to train with one another at the Secretary of Sports Administration there in the country, which was absolutely fabulous. I have some amazing pictures of Jan. Funny enough, there's no pictures of me. So I
have them. No pictures of me, but I have them.
I love it.
I just liked it that you pointed out that when you said we were roommates and then you added to it in the same hotel. I thought that's good that the listeners know this.
Well, it's been so wonderful to get to know you. And there's things that I've actually gotten to learn about you over the years that I didn't even know, which is really exciting. I'm excited to dive into your story. One of the things I love about you, Jan, is you have an infectious smile. Like you smile and the world just brights up around you, as you guys have probably seen. And one of the things I think that's amazing is just your story of getting to where you are, because I don't think many people would have predicted that you would be where you are today. So first of all, you grew up in the Netherlands, correct? You live in Johannesburg right now, South Africa, but you actually grew up in the Netherlands, right?
Yes.
What was childhood like for you?
Oh, it was when I was little for at least a while. It was interesting because my parents had a music shop. My great grandfather had the first ever music shop in Amsterdam when there was no discs yet. There were rolls, like the toilet roll type of things. And my father had to take over the business when his father suddenly passed away. He was the oldest of three sons, and so we basically lived above the music shop, which was wonderful. So there was always music in the middle of town, so it was always noisy. And then from my mother's side, they had a farm. So I spent a lot of time on the farm as well. And I've got fond memory from both, from being in the middle of town, but also spending a lot of time with my grandparents on the farm. And it'll come out a little bit more how much I appreciated them and, the outside life. And even though it was in the 60s, so it was kind of not big tractors and lots of machinery, but it was always wonderful because, I love animals as well. So to be around animals and those kind of things. And when I was between the ages of about 6 and 11, even before that, I was probably as wide as I was tall. If I fell over, I would have been the same height. So I got bullied by my friends, believe it or not. That's usually the ones about the size of me, the elephant and all those kind of things. I was the elephant in the room. And the thing that happened though was at age 12, I grew to the height I am now, 6'4". The Dutch are the tallest nation in the world, and I just added to it. And people, if they've heard of Chinese bamboo, where it takes 5 years for it, and in year 5 it grows 90 feet in 6 weeks. Well, I saw myself as Dutch bamboo because it was as wide as I was tall until I was 11. And at age 12, I grew to 6'4". But not surprisingly, the bullying stopped, but the bullying inside the head carried on, of course, the self-bullying, you're not good enough and all that kind of stuff. I ended up with an ulcer when I was 16 because of it, because I worried a lot. But my childhood really, overall, it was a wonderful time because, we're 4 siblings. We have a lot of cousins and uncles and aunts that lived not too far away from us as well. So we always had family around us. We always had noise and music around us. So it was just a great memory, to think back on them.
Did you fall in love with music? Like, are you a musician? Do you play? Do you sing? Like, what has that carried on in your life?
Well, yeah, my father actually, he's very even to this day. He's going to be 87 this year. He still plays his accordion, but he played a lot of music instruments already when he was younger. I play a bit of a mouth organ, but I mean we're more like the Von Trapp family. I mean there were 7 of us. My mum and dad. My dad was the chairman of a choir of more than 200 people, and we all went to the choir. So we were all singing, 7 of us. That's why I say the Von Trapp family probably got it from us. But it's the sound of music was certainly there, and I've always loved music, But I'm one, and in the different learning styles, whether you're a visual or you're a kinesthetic person, and being a visual person, I was never too interested in all the words of the music. My wife knows a lot more, and my friends they could sing. I could listen to it, and I could make my words up as I was going along. But unless it was Queen, of course. Queen, I knew a lot of the words. I mean, that was my group. But still is. But I think music is a joy in life anyway. It's without it, it's very quiet. And for me, when at age 17 we emigrated to Scotland, I stayed a year behind to finish my high school because the change would have been too much in the exam year. But there we went to live in the forest of all places. And for me, the biggest crazy thing was that people couldn't understand. I couldn't sleep because, I mean, there was no power. So at 11 o'clock at night, the generator went out, and then you would hear the odd owl and a few birds, but for the rest, nothing. So I used to go walking into the forest until eventually I managed to get myself a battery-powered radio. So I had some music on the background, and things got better. But at that time, people say, how so peaceful and quiet? How can you not sleep? I said, well, that was the problem. You live in town, above the music shop, everything around you all the time, and all of a sudden, nothing. There was something missing. Well, there is something missing, but that's a whole different story. But that's more for a psychiatrist than this program. But it's certainly it was a change. But now, I mean, the peace and quiet is good at times, but that's where the biggest change came in.
Wow, that's amazing. So what kind of child were you growing up? Like, were you the outgoing, outspoken? Because, I mean, for those of you that don't know Jan, he's out there. He's spoken. He speaks truth when he has an opportunity to speak truth. Were you always like this, or was there something in life that actually caused you to start speaking up more?
I want to just make one thing for sure, that those people who are now confused, I've always been a boy. Since I was little.
I will say, when we first met, I kept calling you Jan. I was like, hi, Jan. And you were the nicest person. And you never corrected me. That was the thing that drove me nuts later on when I actually realized your name was Jan. And you never corrected me that your name wasn't Jan.
I knew you'd eventually get it right. But as I say to people,
I'm slow.
Join the club. But I always say to people, I've been called a lot worse. So if that's the worst I ever get called from now on, and it wasn't, and it still isn't, then I would be good. But no, as a little kid, I've always had a lot to say. That's for sure. And my mom used to say when I was little, she says, "You need to slow down. I can't understand you." And I'm thinking, I don't know how you don't understand me, because you're teaching me this language. And so there is something wrong with your teaching, really, than with my speaking. But I realized I had a little time and a lot to say. So I never had any problem talking. My problem was shutting up. So I've always had something to say. But what you're talking about is since I was younger, and through the bullying served a point, because when I was being bullied, as a kid, I wanted to belong. So I served my friends. I served everywhere I can. I mean, I was also working in my dad's shop since I was 6 years old. But serving was part of my being, and it became part of my being until at some point I realized I don't belong and I don't need to serve anymore. I'm my own person. But then, I saw it in people getting bullied. I saw it in so many other, and I see it in so many other. There is so many injustices in this world. And as we talked about it beforehand already, as Les Brown said he says it a lot of the time, evil prevails when good men and women do nothing. And for me, one of the reasons I talk is, and it's not that I don't care, because it does upset some people. They try to upset me in plenty of ways. But I think once there is injustices in this world, and once there is something that you feel, it's not, I don't do it to make people angry, but I also know that there is something more that says I need to talk. I must say what I need to say. And there's a whole lot more to it. But I feel nearly feel guilty when I don't open my mouth, and I know I should. But I also know when I do open my mouth that there is a certain amount of people who won't agree with me, and that's fine. I live at peace with that. What I would rather have that when they don't agree, and you see it around the world now, that we can have fruitful conversations, because then we both learn, rather than call each other names and I'm wrong. Listen, in a lot of the stuff that I talk about, I hope I'm wrong. I honestly do. But whether I'm wrong or not, I bring a different perception to the table, and for other people to make an informed decision. And if you still believe the same, as I said to you already, I'm a live and let live kind of guy. I wish you good luck, and I hope the best for you, and I won't think any less of you. But I say, I even when you call me names, I understand sometimes it comes from fear and other negative emotions that you have. So the problem of you calling me names is not me, it's you. And so I'm quite at peace with that. But yes, I've always spoken, even when I remember, now I'm saying this, I remember that when, even in school, when people needed to present in front of the school, when we had things going on and somebody had to go to a group of teachers and explain it, I would go, sometimes it was a bit scary, to say the least, but I thought I knew I'm the one, nobody else would, so I was like, okay, I'll go.
I love that. So you find yourself in Scotland, right? Because you go over there with your family eventually. What happens at that point? What did you find yourself involved with? Because I find it interesting that you got into the oil industry. I feel like most kids don't, grow up going, I want to go into the oil industry.
No, and funnily enough, neither did I.
So how did you move from getting to Scotland? Like, what was that transition like? And then how did that move you towards being in the oil industry, traveling all around the world?
Difficult. I mean, I remember I was at that time 16. As I say, I stayed another year until I was nearly 17, but I was 16. So I had my friends. I've got my best friend was there, still there to this point, my Dutch best friend. And, I knew, so, I mean, I'm a people person, so I've always been a people person. So I connected in the school, I connected all around, and we lived in the middle of town, so everybody knew us, for the good and the bad and the ugly. Everybody knew us, infamous as well as famous. But for me, it was a struggle, because it's not that that I didn't like change, but change at that age, people say, oh, you'll always make new friends, and I thought, oh, well, we'll see. But when you're then you go to Scotland, and the rest of the family were already there, and I visited them a couple of times during that year, in Christmas and in the summer. I was already there in the summer for a couple of months as well. So I got to know some people, but then my older sister and the younger siblings were in school already for a year, of course. So they asked him, have you got more of a family? Yeah, and there's one that's not allowed out of the Netherlands yet. So I stayed with my grandparents, and that was also, by the way, a wonderful experience that I wouldn't take back. It was interesting because then I went to Scotland, and I had all kinds of ideas to go into the special forces and those kind of things. First the RAF, because I wanted to become a pilot, but then they said, oh, you're not British, so you can't come back when you're British, and that would take another few years. And I thought, but that's only a piece of paper. That doesn't make me any difference. But so I had a few interesting conversations with them as well as myself about this. And then I thought, okay, let's try the special forces instead. And then eventually I went down as far as the police. But it was all the same, of course. You can't get into those kind of things if you're not British. Then, while I was still in school, I became a lifeguard. I liked sports as well, and swimming especially, so I became a lifeguard. And from there, because my father got to know a few people while he was there on his own first, and then after that he was working on a farm first as well while he was building up his holiday chalet business. Somebody gave me a call. He says, first of all, there was a local pipe coating industry, so I spent some contracts there, and then somebody said, oh, would you like to come to the oil, it was a rig building yard, and they said, would you like to come and work here in the office? Well, I'll work anywhere at that point. I wanted to go to university, but although most of my grades were good enough, there was one that I needed, and that was physics, which wasn't high enough. And that was the biggest problem with the changeover from Dutch into English, because I could speak pretty good English, but that's a different language altogether, the stuff that you don't learn in your book. So anyway, I didn't get in. So then when they asked, and I started in the office, and from there I worked my way up. It was in the inspection side, because the oil industry was only 15 minutes away from my home. At the shore there, they were building oil rigs and all this kind of stuff, and I was in the pipe coating part first. So I just kind of, again, Les Brown says this as well. He says there is no such thing as coincidence. He says coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. And I don't care whether you're spiritual, religious, or anything else. That should say something, that there is something bigger than you that has an influence on your life. And when you look back, and all these things happen for a reason, and but it doesn't matter what you believe, but they all happen for a reason. Even if you don't believe in that, that's a belief by itself, of course. And I just kind of landed in the oil industry. And from there, I started training myself into the inspection side. And eventually I became pretty good at this. And then a Dutch company, actually, of all companies, took over the inspection contract. And then at some point they said, oh, would you like to go and learn something about automated inspection? No, I'm a lifelong learner. I'll go. Because at 17, I decided that, I can't live like this, because a stomach ulcer, that's for busy professionals and those kind of high stress people, not for a teenager. But I had one. I must have been lucky. So I said, okay, I drew a line in the sand, and I decided I don't want to live like this. Now, sometimes people ask, oh, were you planning taking your life? No, that's never been on the cards, ever, 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 with everything I've been through, because I think there's too much to live for. And we should never be in a state where we actually not only consider, but actually are at a stage where we take our own lives. Because apart from anything, I think it takes courage, whether from the dark side or whatever. It takes a lot of courage, but also the people you would leave behind. I could never do that to my family after all they'd done for me. So, but I decided, and the ulcer cured without medicine, which people don't understand, but you and I understand this kind of stuff. I prayed for this, and my positive attitude is another thing, because at the age of 17, I started personal development. Somebody handed me the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And that started me on a whole different journey. But at the same time, I also started martial arts, which was Ki Aikido, which I do to this day. And Ki Aikido is mind over matter. And people say, how does that work? I say, well, if I give you a smack in the face and you don't mind, it doesn't matter. It doesn't quite work like that, but I mean, that's, but so in that development from then on in, especially, and that all came because I wanted to be a better me. I didn't like for a few years, when I started bullying myself, I didn't like what I was seeing. I still saw the old me. I didn't, and I always said, I know there is better out there for me. I need to be better, because at some point, because I love people, I can help other people better if I become better. Be the change you want to see in the world. And as you say, from the values-based leadership, about Guatemala, what you talk about in Paraguay, the slogan for that program is transformation begins in me. And that is the same, be the change you want to see in the world is along the same lines. So I really rolled into the oil industry, and from there I became an expert in my field, one of the few in the world. And that was my journey in the oil industry. And then, just to close that part off, I mean, I always knew there was better for me. We all have ideas, the voices in our head, and somebody says, no, I don't have a voice like that. Well, that voice that just told you that you don't have one. That's the one. You know, no, I don't. Yes, you do. You know, that conversation you have with on both shoulders, and you smack one away. Sometimes the wrong one, but we all have those voices. We all know that there is more for us in life. I mean, if you read a good book, it says any good book, by the way, it says, you know, we are always told that we should live our best life. But most people will never get to that because the majority of people have a settle for attitude. And I can't help that. And I'm happy for them. But I mean, these people, they don't feel happy, but they say, well, you know, that's all there is. Well, if you're telling yourself that, you're right. But it's at some point, and I never hated my job, by the way. I was doing a lot of training. And in 2009, I started my first coaching training. I did 3 7-month beginners and intermediate and an advanced coaching training for 7 months each. It was called Coaching Cognition from the United States. And I was always training. I mean, my suitcase was more a bookcase than anything else, because I still like the physical books to this day. I always knew there was more for me to do. There was chances of promotion towards the end of my shelf life in the oil industry, if you like. But what happened, of course, is then I started joining the John Maxwell team in 2012. You already alluded on the fact that we went to Guatemala when John Maxwell asked, because I think we joined about the same time. We actually met already in Orlando, but we really got to know each other a bit better already in Guatemala when he asked about anybody who's interested to go and help start transformation of an entire country. Now, being a people person I am, and I was in this, I thought I'll never get asked again. So I threw my hat in the ring. My heart in the ring, actually. And from there on, we went to Guatemala. 150 of us with John Maxwell went to Guatemala for a week. We trained 19,000 people to become facilitators in a process called values-based leadership. Before that, John Maxwell had already said, which didn't make any sense to me, once you've tasted significance, success will never be enough. I had no idea what that was all about until I got to Guatemala. And then I saw it, I experienced it, I felt it. And everybody said it changed their life. You know, you remember, you know, this was a life-changing event. And so many things happened there. And to this day, I'm grateful for that week, because now I felt the significance on the way home. I thought this was the last piece of my jigsaw. What we learned there, because we saw values-based leadership for the first time there, what we learned there, I want to be part of this, to be part of the rest of my life too. On the way home, I quit my job. I needed to work another year because I was a project manager by then, and they were not overly happy, and they couldn't understand when I left. Because you've got a career ahead, you're going to be the global director of training on the biggest inspection company in the world, and the pay rises. I said, listen, it's not about money, it never was about a title. But what I'm just going to say to you is, if you understand, no explanation is necessary. But if you don't understand, no explanation will ever suffice. Yep. And what I said is, you know, there is something deeper in my heart and outside of me that I need to do, and that's what I'm going to do. And most people will stop at that point because now they justify themselves, or they've got a mortgage, they've got kids, they've got a university and all kind of stuff. They've got stuff happening until it's too late, and then they take that with them to the graveyard. But that's where in 2014 I quit my job, and a few other things happened then.
I think that was one of the things that was so surprising about me, because I didn't realize that at the time. Because when I had met you, because I looked at you as a great trainer and we had great conversations, and I was like, oh, this guy must do this professionally for a living, which you did. But more in a different aspect. And then I love that you say that once you taste significance, success will never measure up, because it's true. Yeah, there truly is something like about that, because you and I have both experienced success. We've experienced monetary success and the accolades that come with awards and all those things. At the end of the day, when you're sitting across the table from someone and you see a transformation in their life, you want more of that. You want to be more a part of that. And yes, sometimes that does require some kind of financial investment from your side. But there's also a lot of people that are around us that could truly use the type of transformation that you and I have both experienced. I want to go back just slightly, because one of the things that you said earlier that I wanted to kind of touch on was this idea of, there was a point in your life where you were being bullied by everyone, and then the bullying stopped, except the bully inside of your head continued to persist. What was the transition that you needed to make, that you needed to go through in order to allow yourself to release that bully, to let that bully, you know, be evicted out of your own mind? What was that process like for you?
Ooh, it was a long process. That was actually much longer than I expected, to be honest. I never realized until it started happening, and because I thought now nobody even wants to call me Lanky anymore because I was one of the tallest boys in the school. But I mean that was not important anymore. But once you have this lack of self-esteem, the feelings that you have inside of you, you look at yourself and you see something different that the mirror shows you, and that also happened. My daughter also had issues like this and suffered from bulimia, which at about the same age, and she was 15 years old. I could understand it a little bit when it happened to her, but for me, it has always been a journey. They say it's something about, like an alcoholic when he stops drinking, every day, one day at a time. And for me, it was a little bit like one day, and even one book at a time. Because I started liking these personal development books. I don't know how many I've got, but I mean, I love them, and then, of course, getting involved in the John Maxwell team has also, even though that was a fair bit later, has always been, it's another one of those impactful things that you make certain decisions in your life that work and certain that don't work. That only came because of all the things that have been building up. And I also understood that while I was spending a lot of time, especially in hotel rooms, 10 months of the year, people think it's wonderful. 3 weeks is good. 10 months, not so nice anymore. In that journey, once first of all, I made that decision, and that's an important one, to make the decision that I don't want to live the rest of my life like this. At 17, I had a year of this ulcer. It was, every time it flared up, it was no fun. And I thought, no, I'm too young for this kind of stuff. Like, I don't want to live like this. I don't know how it was going to get out of me, but it did. With the martial arts and with the book that somebody gave me, again, no coincidence. These things, because the martial art is really personal development. It's about becoming stronger on the inside, much more than stronger on the outside. I mean, I'm 6'4". I was working on a farm. I didn't need somebody to tell me that I could throw a good punch. I can throw a hay bale over the top of a lorry, and so I mean, I did. It was more when I really started the martial arts to protect me from me. All these coincidences happened, and I started developing myself. So many decisions I did make earlier on were based still on the fear I had inside of myself. And I think many people, many listeners will, if they've ever had a low self-esteem for whatever reason, whether they've been in a violent marriage, whether they've been downtrodden by their siblings or anybody else, or at work, these things, when they build up over time, you can't just say all of a sudden, oh, well, I'm done with them. I'm gone. They're gone. No, yeah. It is, for some people, it takes a while, and you alluded to it earlier on, but I'm probably also a slow learner. And it took me a lot longer, but the persistence of that goal that I wanted to become better. And I knew I needed to do that extra bit. Les Brown always said, he needed to read, he was reading 3 books a month or something like that, because he knew he was the dumb twin, as he said. And I, it's another area where I really connected with him, because I understood, for me, because of what I put myself through after what I'd been put through, because quite often we're our own worst enemies, I needed to build this up. And I knew it was never going to happen overnight, but I knew I needed a positive attitude. I needed to be grateful for everything that had happened to me and was happening for me, because some of it is a lesson, and some of it you just take along and think, oh, well, that was wonderful. I want more of this. But that can only happen, unfortunately, when you learn some of the lessons, and we need to learn them, because otherwise we keep repeating them, and history does keep repeating itself if you don't learn the lessons. And I think it's always been in the back of my mind what happened and how I got to where I am now. And I'm still certainly not where I want to be yet. It's another wonderful quote to say, I'm not where I ought to be, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm certainly not where I used to be. And I think I remind myself of that all the time, because there is, of course, things happen every now and then, but it will never have the same effect to me. I'm surrounded by wonderful friends like yourself, and these are all blessings that are in my life that I could never have dreamt of if I'd let myself slip. But because we all make decisions in life, and some of these decisions, personal development, coaching, through the coaching, when I was finished, somebody in that coaching training, Kelly Bader, she's still also a John Maxwell, she invited me to the 15 Invaluable Laws Mastermind. Would you like to go into a mastermind? Here, I was learning again. Yeah, well, of course. And she gave me some videos about John Maxwell, and I phoned her up the next day. I watched them, a day about books with John Maxwell. I think there's about 7 of them, small videos. And I said, I'm in. He says, but you don't even know what you're talking about. No, I don't. I'm in. Whatever that is, I'm in. So I must have been one of the easiest clients for her. But I mean, what drove me there was John, as you know, he never talked about money. He never talked about anything else but adding value to other people. Now, I've been doing that. And having done that all the time, I was home. You know, for that part of it, to be surrounded by at first there was 600 people, and then it was 1.5, and then eventually it was 3,000 people in a place. If I had not made those decisions early on, again, nothing by coincidence, I would never have been in Guatemala. I would never have had that life changing. There is some life enhancing situations that happened in my life. I've been old enough now to have a few of them happen. But I mean, there's been things have happened in my life, and some of them I wish that hadn't happened, of course, and some of them affected me very negatively. But when this happened to me, I knew, you know, when you know that you know there is no explanation for it, and you say, when I said, this is it, I'm done. I knew I was working towards something for a long time, that all of a sudden when I said I'm going to quit my job on the way home in the plane, I never doubted it. Was it the best decision at the time? Should I first have maybe build up my business outside of that? I should have, yeah. But I just wonder if I'd waited another 6 months or a year, what would have happened? I made that decision, and once the decision is made, and once you're really sure, and sure, because also in 2014, in fact, in April, I said many years ago, more than 30 years before that, so now about 40 years ago, I said, if somebody's going to teach me to speak, it's going to be Les Brown or nobody, because I had seen a video for him first. I've met him since as well quite a few times, but I mean, he spoke into my heart, like, you know, for the way he spoke, and the way, his fun as well, and all this kind of stuff, his whole family. So in April 2014, of all places, I went to train with him in Amsterdam, and he said to me, I want to train you. In fact, he said to me, I want to speak on your stages. I said, I'll speak on some of yours first, if that's okay with you. But I mean, we had a lot of fun together, and he wanted to train me. And I said, well, this is what I've asked for. Be careful what you wish for. And then the next month in May, just 10 years ago, actually, just at the beginning of the 2 weeks, a week and a half ago, I also got invited to Berlin, Ohio, Amish country, to become a values-based leadership specialist, a global value. And John Maxwell, whose friend, Jerry Anderson, is the owner of that company, and he's in the board. He said, for many years, you need to start doing this as a for-profit, because that way you can spread this amazing program that we've been talking about already from the different countries that we've been in. You can spread this more effectively with individuals. So I was one of the 17 people who got a call. I went there. That was in May. On the way home, I went home for the weekend to Scotland. And then on Sunday night, I traveled to the Netherlands. And on Monday, I quit. I told them that, goodbye, you're the weakest link, I'm gone. And the thing was, I had a book somewhere where I put in it the 12th of May 2014, I will tell them that I'm gone. They wanted to give me a pay cut as well, which I wasn't too happy about. But I mean, that had nothing to do with it anymore anyway. But I went into the office. They were all sitting there smiling with the books in there on the table, and they were starting. I let them, and I says, "Listen, you're fired." And he says, "You can't fire me." He says, "Out of my life, you can." I says, "Don't take it personal." I says, "There's other things I need to do, but I'm out of here. I need to work a little bit more time yet." But I was gone. So those kind of things, they do happen in life when you actually put it out there, and there's a lot more of that to come, of course. But you know, I mean, for me, it's always been, you know, to see other people around grow. You know, like, I mean, I love it when I watch your Facebook page and you've got your 3 children with you. I mean, that makes me smile, not just because of the funny faces you pull, but the fact that, you know, the fact that you know, 10 years ago, even 8 years ago, there was none of this. And all of a sudden, you've got this wonderful family around you, and the way you've grown, and I mean, it's a privilege for me to be your friend, and to see a family man like this, and then also giving of himself, not only in his family, but in all you do, and the podcast and everything. For me, it's just absolutely amazing.
You know what I really love about what you say is, for those of you listening, like there are moments where you pray and you pray and you pray and you want something to happen in your life, and then God puts it in your life. the opportunity. God doesn't always just give it to you. He gives you the opportunity. And I want you to hear what Jan's saying right now, that God hears your prayers. He gives you opportunities to jump. But the question is when he gives you the opportunity to jump, when you've prayed about something, do you jump? Or do you just sit there going, man, I really wish this ulcer would just disappear. I really wish that I would have an opportunity to speak with, Les Brown, or fill in the blank. Like whatever it is in your life that you desire, that you've been praying for, God is giving you opportunities to take a step forward. And the question is, are you going to take that step forward? And sometimes those steps forward, they look like crucible moments, because they are. They're crucible moments to say, is this what you really, really want? Is this what you really desire? Jan, you've talked about a number of different crucible moments in your life, from the time of being bullied to the time of coming back from Guatemala and making that transition to say, this is what I really want, and making that jump when the opportunity was there. There was also another time in your life I'd love for you to talk about. There was a crucible moment back in 2000. And it was actually with a really good friend of yours. And I'd love for you to talk about that, because so many of us in life live life like we have a million years ahead of us. We plan our days out like we're going to be here in 5 years. And sometimes life just hits differently. And you have to live every single day like it's your last day. Would you talk about that? What happened to you in 2000?
In 2000, and I was actually traveling away. I just come back from Brazil. I was going to help a young boy. He's 22 years old. I was going to help him to get ready for his black belt. He was a nephew of my best friend. My best friend didn't have any children, and he had a business, and he was going to leave it to him after that. And I'd known his father and his parents as well. But I said to him, I said on the Tuesday, I said, okay, on Thursday night we're going to go and I'll take you through the practice, because that was in March, and in August it was his turn to go for the black belt. And because I had him in with me in the martial arts since he was 7 years old, so 15 years really, and I was also 15 years older than him. And my best friend, who is his uncle, is 15 years older than me. So there's a lot of 15s in this. But again, coincidence. But he, amazing young boy, whole life ahead of him, and he had a wonderful girlfriend as well. He went to visit her on a Wednesday, and on the Thursday morning, I'm visiting somebody, and I said, "Did you hear?" And it didn't. He said somebody, and he mentioned a surname, had an accident. Okay. It still didn't hit home to me. And then I got a phone call. And that's one of my other best friends. And he says, he said the same thing. He was on the phone and he says, "Did you hear?" And I knew there was something far wrong. And he was quiet for a bit, and he said, David, that's his name, he had a motorbike accident. He hit a cow on the road, of all kinds of things, and he didn't survive. How do you mean? He only hit a cow on the road. I mean, it was in a little country road. He hit the cow. The farmer had been complaining about that the fence was broken, but he hit the cow. So the cow was out. It was already getting a bit darker. The cow was out. He hit him, and he came off his motorbike. And normally the sudden hit stopped his brain, but by him falling back on the road, that brain should have started again. And he's one of a 1 in billion people that it didn't happen to. That really, I mean, I first, of course, I was quiet, and we talked a little bit on the phone, and then I thought, okay, now I need to go to my best friend to see what's happened there, because I can't even imagine. He was like a little brother to me. So I was sitting there for a while, dazed, and I thought, what now? Why him? Why not me? Actually, I even said those kind of things, and I suppose it's human, but at that time I questioned even my belief, because we had somebody in school that had an accident. In fact, one of my friends in school had a car accident, and his girlfriend, who was a good friend of my sister, died in that. But we were all about the same age at that time, and it was a shock. But this was so close to home, and it affected so many people around me. And I thought, I phoned my friend later on. I waited a while, and I phoned him first, and because I thought, he's got plenty of things going on just now. He doesn't need me around. But I went to see him the next day, but that night I couldn't sleep. And I was wondering how this was gonna pan out, because when there's things in life that really cheer you up and help you to the next level, but this one, I was on my knees, I just didn't know what was going to happen next. As I do even a talk about it because it affected me so much. And I said, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't decided to take that book, if I hadn't decided to take this positive martial arts side and all the learnings I had done. I was 37 at the time. Had I not had that, I have no idea how I would have come out of this. But what happened was, because I had that, now I also had the responsibility to help my best friend, his family, all our friends in the martial arts. I mean, we'd been 2 years before that. We went to Italy to a European martial arts camp for a week, and David talked about it all the time. It's the best thing that ever happened to him. But we had a lot of fun together with a small group of people. But every one of them was affected, of course. And there is a whole story to it. But I had to, at some point, go back to work, and I never really had a chance to grieve yet, because I was helping everybody else. And we went to see the body and things like that. It was not the only thing was with a little blip on his nose where it hit the helmet. For this, nothing, which made it even more difficult in a way. But when the funeral had been, and I spent as much time with him as possible, but then I had to go, and I was still. I mean, that next year was an interesting year for me, but I had a difficult time dealing with it. That's for sure. And I drank more than was good for me. I had another boy who was with me, and he liked to drink anyway. So we sat there talking, talking all the time, but a bottle in one hand and a glass in the other. As I started to get through there, and I really picked up my books again and all those kind of stuff, because I knew one thing that really came to me during that time is that, he was 22. He had his whole life ahead of him. I felt I owe it to him for me to live my best life. And I know that'll make sense to not everybody, because they say you owe nothing to nobody. But I mean, I really felt, because of the closeness, I thought, in a way I wanted to do something that would add to my life, because one life is lost. And that really made me even more committed to. I mean, even that on its own was an injustice in my. But there's nothing we could do about it. But it added to my resolve and my resilience, but also to my quest for injustices, and to make sure that I would add value to people wherever I could. So that really the crux of it is a short. Wait till you hear the long story, but I mean that's really the short of it. But I mean it, as even now I can talk about it and I can feel the emotion, but I've learned to control them, because for a while when I wrote my talk, because I wanted people to understand that when bad things happen, there is things that you need to do for yourself, because life must go on, and you don't feel for it at that time, and I didn't know how it was going to go on. But I couldn't do the talk for long enough. And when people ask me about it, I had to learn that to make sure that I could do that, not only to connect with other people, because so many people have been through things like this and worse, to be able to help people with a story where, you went through the valley and you came out, things are okay, Yeah. You need to still make the best life of it. Even at that time, it seems so heavy, whatever that heaviness looks like for somebody. And when people are listening, connect with people. I could do this because of the 20 years training I had, but even I was on my knees. I was out. If you don't have those connections and you feel desperate, don't do it on your own. Make sure you connect with other people. People are interested in you. Sometimes it's very difficult to know how to help you when you feel that bad. What do you say to these kind of people? Anything you say was meaningless, but it's not. Some people just, they are willing to listen while you were talking. They are willing to put a hand on your shoulder. The human touch is powerful. But don't do this on your own. If you feel that whatever you've gone through, don't feel that you need to do it on your own. And I was also blessed that, as I said earlier, I've got great family around me. I've got tremendous friends around me. But for me, for a while, it was very difficult to reach out. And I wish I'd done that sooner, by the way.
Well, I love that you say don't do it alone because so many people live life like they're on their own, even though they're surrounded by a lot of people. And there is kind of an importance to building community, and not just any community, but building the right community around you, people that you can go to when you do have something going on that you can communicate, or maybe it's not even communicating. Maybe it's just sitting in silence. I'm curious for you, community wise, how important has community been in your life? And what have you done to build a community that was right for you? Because not every community is right for someone. But what
No.
did it look like for you to build a community that could support you and encourage you in the ways that you needed it?
Oh, that's a good question. And you're right there too. Sometimes just to sit there and say nothing is the best thing you can do for somebody. But for them to know that you're there is so much more important. And it's, as you said, community has always been important to me because, where it all started and being surrounded by people and music. And I was always outgoing up to a point. I've been told often enough that I was too much of a people pleaser. But that came from the background, and I wanted to do good. But to do good can only happen if you do good for yourself as well. I mean, I talk about self-care as well, and I wrote about this, and I call it self-care isn't selfish. Becoming healthier happens by choice, not by chance. And I did it because of the last few years, because I realized that we can blame everybody else for what's wrong with us. We can blame the government, our neighbor, our spouse, the children, the dog, anything and everybody else. But in the end, the only people who can really are responsible for our health is a person looking in the mirror every day. So we need to be intentional about that. That's a different word as well. Not have good intention, but be intentional and live an intentional life. When you now mention community, I've been in communities that were okay. I've been in communities that really, at some point, said, I can't be around these kind of people anymore for a variety of reasons. I mean, some of them I had outgrown. By the way, I want to be clear that never discard people, discard things, love people. But that doesn't mean that you need to be around them all the time. There are some people that you've outgrown over 10, 20, 30 years. You can still be with them sometimes, but you can't be with them as much as you used to do when you were younger. People are in your life for a reason, for a season, and for life. And if it's for a reason and for a season, take it as that. And some of them you might never see again. Don't feel guilty about it either. You need to really, again, decide what kind of community is right for you. And it doesn't have to be a lot of people, because when you said this, people are alone. I say there is nothing wrong with being alone. You can be in a crowd and be lonely. And that is much worse. Because if you're alone, you can decide to be alone. But if you're lonely, that is on an emotional level very, very different. And there are so many people who are lonely. And when we see people on their own, it doesn't mean that they don't want to be around people. Sometimes it's just to go up to somebody and say, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? Maybe just to sit beside them and listen to them for a few minutes. And we have it a lot to say, how are you? I'm fine. And then they walk on. And they're not really fine. But that's the kind of standard answers we give each other, because, they don't care anyway. But then stop the next time and say, no. How are you really doing? And then pause, let them. And this is very frightening for people, because all of a sudden they get an opportunity to talk with it that they've never had before. And I say, listening is something that will save lives, and it might save your life. But when you then look at community, and you need to start looking at the kind of people you want in your life and put it out there. Don't just hope that at some point somebody comes around the corner that suits your life, whether it's going to be your spouse, whether it's going to be another friend, and hopefully that'll be a long-time friend. Every kind of community you build, and whether it's friendship or whatever relationship it is, it takes effort. I mean, I love the leadership lessons from John Maxwell, and he also talks about, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I talk about it too. And I said, but how do you get influence? It's like building relationships. How do you build relationships? By asking better questions. How do you ask better questions? By listening better. Everything depends on listening, even life. So when you start building relationships, start not some of them are only there for work, which is crazy, because I was working with people for 15 years and I didn't really know them that well, some of them. But I started asking questions, about their hobbies, about their life, about their wife, about their children, about anything else but work. Because When you're surrounded by people of work, what have you got in common? Work. So you talk about it all the time, and at some point, I thought, hold on a minute here. When I listened to John, and I thought, that. In fact, I read it in the book before that already, and it made sense. And I thought, and then especially when I started coaching as well, I found out I'd been coaching for 25 years because I didn't know what it really was. It is asking questions and listening, and that's how you build community with people. And there is some people that don't fit in your community. And eventually they'll excuse themselves, or at some point you just spend less time with them. And we should never be feeling guilty about that. As long as we keep treating people right, we don't have to kick them out. And there are some people that should never have been in our life in the first place. We'll find that out sometimes as well. But it's having open conversations and build that community too, where some people, depending on your personality as well, they're very reserved. They like some people around them, but there's only a handful. And other people outgoing, they would be good in the middle of 3,000 people and stand in the middle and jump on the stage and say, "Yeah, I'm here. Let's have you," or have a party. But depending on the personality, depending on the learning styles, depending on a lot of things, but you need to decide for you. Don't wait until life happens to you. That's what I'm trying to say. Even building communities is something that you need to be actively engaged in, so you have control over it as well. But for me, community is so many different things. I mean, community is just connecting with you. I mean, sometimes we have a little chat here and there on Facebook. As you said, what you said, you sit beside each other for three hours. Sometimes you don't connect or meet people for a long time. And then when you connect again, it's like you've never been away. That happened to my best friend in the Netherlands. I hadn't seen him for 15 years. I knock on his door. I had a couple of cans of beer in my hand, and that helped, of course. But I knocked on his door, and the first few seconds was a bit, I see how it... And all of a sudden, like we'd been together. But that is a whole different kind of community, but that takes so much work. So it depends on the work you are willing to put in to discover the kind of community you eventually will have.
It's so good. For all of you guys listening, I hope you hear what he's saying of just the intentionality behind building a life that matters, building a life of community, bringing people into your life. But not only that, but also the intentionality around growth, because so many people that we know are not living their life with a growth mentality. Think about it, they're just going in and they punch a time clock and then they punch out and that's it. That's all they ever do. And life is this monotonous thing that they do every single day. I've loved having you on, Jan. I want to ask you one more question here before we wrap up. But for those of you that are listening right now, I want to encourage you, go check out keyleadership.com. That is the company that Jan and his beautiful bride have created to work with leaders in their community, but also around the world. So go check out what they're doing. That's keyleadership.com. That's KILEADERSHIP.com. Jan, growth is such a huge part of your life, a huge part of your journey. What would you say to someone who maybe has been in the growth space? Maybe they're getting a little bit tired of it because they feel like, I don't feel like I'm growing anymore. There's that monotonous period sometimes, even with growth, where you pick up another book and you go, it's just another book. How is this going to help me? You're always one book away from your next breakthrough. We both have heard that before. What would you say to the person that has been on their growth journey, but maybe they feel like they've dulled a little bit? Maybe they need some more inspiration to get back in to continue growing themselves. What do you say to that person?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the quickest answer is never give up. The Winston Churchill, never give up. But that would be too simple, and it's not that easy. And as you were saying that already, the first thing that came to my head, which is not always the cleverest, but it came anyway, is New Year's resolutions. And that is and I was just talking to somebody in the gym the other day about this. I mean, I exercise a bit as well for my health, because my wife's such a good cook as well. But it is a very similar thing though, because I just said to them, I say that the last year the drop-off rate. They have a day that people start dropping off. And when they asked me, I said, well, I know 10, 20 years ago when I looked into it, it was maybe the middle or the end of March that people started dropping off the gym. Now, last year, it was the 17th of January. And
we're not making it very far.
No, but I can just see these people. They've been to the gym for 2 weeks, and our gym has got quite a few big mirrors. I don't want to see that guy on the other side. I don't have to look at him. I know what he looks like. But and then I can just imagine him after about a week. They go and stand in front of the mirror and go, "Oh," I say, "it's not happened yet. It's never going to work. Well, we'll quit. Maybe next year." That's why I will say Happy New Day. Because if you say Happy New Day, that means you don't have to wait for Happy New Year. You can do it again tomorrow. Because you can fall off the wagon. But I think with personal development and personal growth, it's certainly not a someday thing. Because I learned as a martial art a long time ago, you never stand still, even though you might think so. You either every day you go up a notch or you go down a notch. And how big that notch is that varies for everybody. But so if today you don't do anything, you go down a notch, that means tomorrow you need to do something to go to where you were the day before. Consistency is key. Perseverance is key. I mean, I've said people, I want a black belt. And I say, here, you can have mine. But then I'm going to treat you like a black belt if you come on the mat. And that was not the answer they were hoping for. But I said, and they always want what you have. I mean, if they went to you, they want a happy family. Yeah, but that isn't not going to happen overnight, and it needs to be worked on as well. I'm pretty sure. But for people who are struggling, I had it in martial arts. At some point, I said, I feel as I'm not getting anywhere. But I kept going, and that is the first part. Keep going. Because when you don't feel like it and when you don't feel like you're getting something, the determination to keep going is everything you might have at that moment to make sure that at some point you can look back. What I did, I look back 6 months later and says, hey, I'm a lot further than I was 6 months ago. But sometimes you don't see life is made up not of sometimes you get a huge change and an aha moment and all that kind of stuff. And it's wonderful if you get them every day, but you don't. So now you're working on your personal development, and that is something that you need to do every day because that's what leadership is all about. It's all about personal growth. If you feel you're struggling, first of all, never quit. Keep going. It is that day, that couple of weeks, that couple of months that you feel like that you need it more than ever before. And as you are developing and you're still doubting whether it's going to do you any good, believe in other people. Use other people's belief in you until you believe in yourself. So connect with people who will believe in you, because there's plenty of people who believe in you. There's also plenty of people who want to say to you, who do you think you are? You're never going to do that, all that kind of stuff. You don't want to be around them too much. Surround yourself with positive people. Surround yourself with people who lift you up rather than tear you down. That's also very important, because when you feel a little bit down that it doesn't seem to be working. It probably is, but your realization that something doesn't seem to change, at that point it is probably in the process of changing. But you might be somewhere in the valley of that roller coaster. You're on that difficult part where you're just going up again, and that's when you need to all the power you can have to bring that car to the top before you go over the top, and then life is not plain sailing after that. But then it becomes easier. You sometimes hit a wall. Marathon runners do it all the time. They say about the 18 mile. I thought for me the 800 meters would do it, but the 18 miles is usually somewhere where they hit a wall. I've got a friend who's a marathon runner, and I talk to him and I learn. I'm never going to be a marathon runner, by the way, but I'm learning the mindset that what he needs to keep going when things get difficult. And that's what we really talk about. Life is not always easy. If you give up on you give up on life. I know it's not easy, but it's possible. When you are struggling in your personal development, maybe it's a wrong, as you said, sometimes the book doesn't do it. Don't start forcing yourself to read a book that you don't want to do. Put it aside and get another book. Even pick up a book that you liked before and read it again, because you'll probably read things in there that you say, that was never there when I read it the first time. That means you've grown. Talk to other people. They will tell you have changed. And that if you work on your personal development, that's always positive. Might not be to them because they're not changing and they want to drag you back, but never ever give up. You are worth it. You matter, and you owe it to yourself, because you will be. You owe it to yourself to be the best person you can be, and that happens one day at a time, intentionally, every single day.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's funny because when you say the roller coaster and you get down to that point, and you almost kind of lose momentum as soon as you get that click. You know what I'm talking about? There's that click on the roller coaster, and you just start hearing that, and you start clicking away just bit by bit, as close as you can. And every single day, just get up and do the next thing that you're able to do. I think that's so powerful, and to never give up. Jan, thank you so much for being on the show today. It has been so wonderful to hear your story, listen to what you're doing in your life. For all of you listening, I want you to take a moment, go to wherever you listen to your podcast, and tell us what you liked about this episode. What was your favorite part? Because I know that there are so many really great moments that Jan just poured into our lives. Until next time, remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.